What if the largest robbery in the history of the USSR was planned by the state itself? From 1940 to 1947, dozens of gold transports disappeared without a trace across the country. Hundreds of armed guards vanished into thin air, and investigations were suddenly closed by order from above. But this is not just a crime. This is an operation that Moscow still does not want to acknowledge. Archival documents, classified diaries, strange coincidences, mysterious suicides, NKVD officers who possessed passwords, codes, and disappeared like shadows. This video tells a story that has been hidden for decades. A story of inexplicable disappearances, secret air bases, pseudo-archaeological expeditions, fake geological reports, and a special operation that legalized the gold of dead convoys. In the deep and damp basements of the main building on Lubyanka, far from prying eyes, folders not intended for study, even by the highest ranks of the NKVD, are still kept today. Steel cabinets with double locks guard secrets capable of overturning our understanding of the 1940s. Among them is case number 4287, impassively recording dry statistics. Over 7 years, from 1940 to 1947, 37 transports of gold and valuables disappeared without a trace from routes across the Soviet Union. The total weight of the missing precious metal exceeds 2 tons. Archivist Pyotr Semyonov, who worked with these papers in the 50s, left a note in his diary. Reading these documents, you realize that much of what was considered a crime was actually a secret state operation. The story hidden in these folders is not just a chronicle of the greatest robbery of the century. It is something much larger and more sinister. It all began in the icy desert in March 1940. A transport carrying 47 kilograms of purest gold, extracted by the forced labor of prisoners at the Dalstroy mines, followed its usual route along the Kolyma-Magadan-Khabarovsk winter road. 8 standard larch boxes, upholstered with felt and sealed with a lead seal, were accompanied by a platoon of 20 guards. They were commanded by Senior Lieutenant Vasily Kornilov, an officer with an impeccable reputation and an Order of the Red Star for exemplary service. The caravan, on sleds drawn by hardy Yakut horses, moved slowly but steadily, making contact every 8 hours and transmitting coded messages. The last radio message was received on March 15th at 14:30 from the village of Ust-Nera. The text was standard: moving on schedule, cargo normal, weather clear, temperature -32. The next communication session was scheduled for 22 hours, but the air was ominously silent. A perfectly debugged system failed. The convoy, following the plan, simply vanished into the boundless taiga. Search parties, dispatched 2 days later, found the scene 20 kilometers from the last radio contact point. The picture was strange and frightening. The wreckage of the sleds was neatly arranged on the snow. Next to them were several dark bloodstains, but there were too few for 20 people. Experienced forensic expert Ivan Morozov, who arrived from Khabarovsk, noted in his conclusion, "It creates the impression of a carefully planned staging to conceal the true circumstances." But the main mystery was the complete absence of bodies. Criminals never bothered to hide victims in the wild taiga. Where did the 20 guards disappear to? The answer to this question was suggested by the tracks in the snow. They did not belong to ordinary bandits. Clear imprints of military-style boots and skis from 1937 and 1938 were used exclusively in NKVD units. This completely changed the whole case. It was an attack by their own. The investigation pointed to a monstrous conspiracy within the department, but the official report sent to Moscow suddenly and drastically changed the wording. The transport was caught in a snowstorm and died under an avalanche. Later, in the personal diary of Dalstroy Chief Nikishov, an entry would be found. Received instructions from Moscow to curtail the investigation. Beria called personally. Moscow does not want an investigation for reasons unknown to me. Why was the country's top leadership so afraid of the truth? Few witnesses could provide answers, but their voices were silenced forever. The first was driver Grigory Semyonov, who accompanied the caravan the day before. He recounted that their camp was silently surrounded at night by about 40 people in NKVD winter uniforms. Their commander, a man with a scar on his cheek, presented impeccably prepared documents for a route change. He knew all the code words and passwords. Kornilov, having checked the papers, complied. Semyonov was released, ordered to report the change of route. The very next day, after giving testimony, he was arrested, and a week later, he was gone. The official version was suicide, but a doctor who secretly examined the body concluded that the driver had been strangled. The second survivor was Convoy Sergeant Pyotr Rybakov. He was found 5 days later in the taiga, semi-conscious. Upon regaining consciousness, he told a terrible truth. He recognized 2 employees from the supply department of his own camp among the attackers. Negotiations were just a ruse. When the gold was reloaded, the commander of the attackers gave a signal, and the cold-blooded massacre began. Rybakov, pretending to be lifeless, saw how the wounded were finished off and the bodies taken away on separate sleds. Soon after the interrogation, the sergeant's life ended in the infirmary from acute heart failure, although the doctor also suspected poisoning here. The third, radio operator Kuleshov, was found in a state of madness and only repeated one phrase: "The gold flew north." He was placed in a psychiatric hospital where he soon faded away. Everyone who could shed light on the mystery was silenced forever. It became clear the organizers were not only professionals, but also possessed the power to cover up any traces, even within the NKVD system itself. It soon became obvious that the Kolyma incident was merely a trial run. Disappearances became an epidemic, sweeping across the entire country. In the summer of 1940, 11 more transports vanished. The routes lay through different regions: Vorkuta, Krasnoyarsk Krai, Yakutia. But the scenario was eerily identical: the appearance of people in NKVD uniforms with impeccable documents. In June, a whole railway train with gold was stopped on the stretch between Bogotol and Achinsk stations. The attackers presented a warrant for emergency seizure of the cargo signed by Deputy People's Commissar of Internal Affairs Vsevolod Merkulov. An expert examination in Moscow later showed that the warrant was a skillful forgery, but the paper and watermarks were genuine, from Goznak. Such access to forms and signature samples was available only to the highest-ranking officials of the People's Commissariat. The circle of suspects narrowed to 5 people from the department's top brass. However, the page with their names was neatly cut out with a blade from the case materials, and the officer leading the investigation was arrested. The network operated at the highest level, suppressing any attempts to get to the truth. A breakthrough occurred in August when another caravan was attacked in Norilsk, and again one guard survived, Private Semyon Kulikov. Hiding behind rocks, he not only saw the attack, but also clearly identified the commanders: the head of the Norilag Regime Department, Lieutenant Colonel Andrei Vlasov, and his deputy, Major Nikolai Rogov. This was the first time that specific names of high-ranking officers were named. Vlasov and Rogov were immediately arrested. In Vlasov's safe, copies of secret routes and a codebook to which he, by rank, could not have access, were found. During interrogations in the Lubyanka basements, both cracked. They admitted their involvement, but stated that they were only carrying out a secret order from Moscow to create a special fund. Rogov directly pointed to his curator, Deputy People's Commissar Vsevolod Merkulov. It seemed the investigation had reached the very organizer, but the denouement was swift and unexpected. Vlasov and Rogov were secretly sentenced to the highest measure, and the sentence was immediately carried out. The case was officially closed, blaming everything on the self-activity of 2 overreaching officers. However, just 3 days after their elimination, another gold caravan disappeared in Norilsk. It became obvious: Vlasov and Rogov were just pawns, scapegoats, and the real puppet master remained free and continued his game. After this, the tactics of the attackers changed dramatically. They no longer bothered with staged documents. In the winter of 1941, convoys simply began to disappear, vanishing into thin air. The most inexplicable case occurred in the Magadan region. A caravan left one NKVD post but never reached the second, located only 12 kilometers away along a straight, clearly visible road. Search parties found absolutely nothing. No signs of struggle, no tracks of equipment, or people on the smooth, untouched snow cover. It was as if the transport took off and evaporated. The NKVD leadership was completely at a loss, and reports began to include phrases about unexplained nature and the use of unknown technical means. Rumors spread among the local population about a strange humming in the sky and flashes of light. The criminals demonstrated complete impunity and almost supernatural capabilities. The scale of the problem reached such proportions that a special investigation commission was established in Moscow. The statistics presented at the first meeting were shocking. Over 2 tons of gold stolen in a year, 420 guards missing without a trace, an entire military battalion. But the most paradoxical thing was that the very Vsevolod Merkulov, whom the arrested had already pointed to, was appointed chairman of this commission. The circle was closed. The wolf was put in charge of investigating attacks on the sheep. Soon the commission found the guilty party. The head of the planning department, Colonel Ivan Sokolov. During a search, copies of all the routes of the missing transports and a German radio were found at his place. During interrogation, Sokolov gave exhaustive testimony. He confirmed that he was only a link in the chain, and the true organizer of the entire scheme was Merkulov. The goal was to create a secret state fund. Sokolov named several other high-ranking participants and spoke of the existence of a special classified unit, the Special Purpose Group. Merkulov was immediately removed from the leadership of the commission. It seemed that justice was about to prevail. But 2 days later, Sokolov suddenly retracted all his testimony, stating that it had been obtained under duress. And a week later, he was found in his cell. He was silenced forever. There was no suicide note. Merkulov was reinstated with official apologies. The commission was disbanded, and the case was closed. The main witness was eliminated. The main suspect, clean and omnipotent again. With the outbreak of war, ground transportation became too risky, and gold began to be delivered by air. But even this did not stop the mysterious organization. In September 1941, a Li-2 transport aircraft flying from Yakutsk to Krasnoyarsk with 120 kilograms of gold on board disappeared from radar. The official version was a crash due to bad weather. However, weather reports completely refuted it. The sky was clear on the day of the flight. It soon became clear that on the night of the disappearance, an unidentified aircraft, similar to a Li-2, landed at an old, abandoned airfield 100 kilometers from Krasnoyarsk. An inspection of the airfield yielded shocking results. The runway had recently been repaired, and camouflaged hangars and warehouses had been set up nearby. This was a full-fledged secret airbase. The tracks led further to a railway station from which wagons with unknown cargo were regularly sent to Novosibirsk, to secret NKVD warehouses. The contents of these warehouses were so secret that even the local departmental leadership did not know about them. A chance event provided a clue. In March 1942, a large fire broke out in one of these warehouses in Novosibirsk. When the fire was extinguished, experts discovered gold bars totaling 80 kilograms among the melted structures. The markings on the bars left no doubt. This was the same gold that had disappeared from the Gulag caravans. This was the first material evidence. The investigation was led by experienced State Security Major Vasily Gromov. He quickly established that at least half a ton of gold was stored in the warehouse. 3 responsible persons were arrested: the head of the department, his deputy, and the warehouse manager. All 3 gave identical testimony. They acted on a personal order from Moscow from Deputy People's Commissar Merkulov. The goal was to create a special state reserve for financing intelligence operations and in case of military failures. In support of their words, they provided a copy of the order printed on an authentic People's Commissariat form, with Merkulov's real signature and authentic seal. But no such order existed in the official NKVD archives. This meant that a parallel shadow management system was operating in the country, accessible only to a narrow circle of individuals from the highest leadership. In the midst of the investigation, when Gromov was ready to expose the entire network, an order came from Moscow personally from People's Commissar Lavrenti Beria. Immediately stop the investigation. The arrested were released and transferred to new positions. Gromov was promoted in rank and sent to another unit. And in May 1942, all disappearances of gold transports suddenly ceased. A concise note sent to Beria by one of his deputies remained in the archives. Operation Gold Reserve successfully completed. Accumulated resources transferred to their destination. The secret was revealed. This was not criminal activity, but a grandiose, top-sanctioned, secret operation to create a state black cash fund in the conditions of impending and ongoing war. When the acute phase of the war passed, a new question arose: how to return this shadow gold to official state circulation. For this purpose, in 1943, a new top-secret NKVD unit was created, Group K, under the command of Colonel Ivan Serov. Officially, they were engaged in combating economic crimes in the camps. Their real task was much more delicate. They were involved in the systematic legalization of accumulated gold. According to a meticulously developed plan, ingots in small batches were distributed among the largest mines in Siberia and the Far East, and included in monthly reports as above-plan production. Fake geological reports on the discovery of new gold-bearing veins were prepared, and technical documents were forged. Over 3 years, Group K successfully legalized over 1.5 tons of gold, returning it to the Treasury. The fate of the remaining approximately 500 kilograms remained unknown. Perhaps it was a personal reserve of the country's top leadership or funds for the most secret foreign operations. This system worked flawlessly until 1953, when its main curator, Lavrenti Beria, was arrested and eliminated. The new leadership, not privy to the details, disbanded Group K. After this, timid attempts began to find the remaining caches. In the 50s and 60s, special commissions, disguised as archaeological expeditions, unsuccessfully surveyed abandoned mines and warehouses in Siberia. Only once in 1955 did they get lucky. A cache with 120 kilograms of gold was found near Sverdlovsk. The last person who knew the whole truth, the head of Group K, Ivan Serov, before his death in 1957, handed over a sealed envelope to his deputy. It contained a map indicating 3 points in the Krasnoyarsk territory, where, according to him, the last caches were stored. 2 points were checked in the 60s. One turned out to be empty. In the second, they found only remnants of containers. The third was in such a hard-to-reach area that the expedition there was deemed impractical. Soon, the search was officially stopped. The mystery of the missing gold is a story of how the state, for survival, created a shadow structure operating outside the law and morality. It is a story of people who were not criminals, but executors of secret orders, who took their secrets with them. Key documents on Operation Gold Reserve are still in the archives under the heading Top Secret, and perhaps we will never know the whole truth. This secret will remain one of the many scars on the body of history, a perpetual reminder that behind the facade of official chronicles, complex and contradictory processes are always hidden, which we are only beginning to understand.